What's going on, everybody? Anthony Cervino here with the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube channel with my top must-start players for NFL Week 15. We're going to start with Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard, we know what's going on in that backfield, and right now, not much. Raheem Blackshear's questionable with an injury. Miles Sanders on IR, Jonathan Brooks on IR. In fact, they have Velus Jones, a converted wide receiver, listed as running back 3. This is Chuba Hubbard's backfield. He's been dominating the snaps. Played 97 snaps last week. Jonathan Brooks only 4 before the injury. Even before that, when Jonathan Brooks was good to go in week 13, only 21 snaps to Chuba's 79. We know this has been the case all season long. This is Chuba Hubbard's backfield. He did not let it go, and he will not let it go for the remainder of the year. And he's been outstanding. And while he was in a little bit of a slump in 2 out of his past 3 games, under 13 PPR points last week, in a really tough matchup against Philly. 20.7 PPR points is most since week 10. 26 carries, 92 yards, and a touchdown. Also caught 4 of 5 targets for 15 yards. That's over 100 total yards and a touchdown on 30 touches. He normally gets right around 19.2 touches per game. He was dominant in probably one of the toughest matchups he's faced all year. The tough matchup's gone now. The next 3 games through the fantasy playoffs, you can hammer Chuba Hubbard every single week, but the best one is upcoming against Dallas, 27th against the run. And I get it, Dallas's defense, they played a little bit better in the past few games, but we know this is one of the worst front sevens in the NFL. Even one of their better up-and-coming players, Overshawn, he's done for extended period due to an injury suffered last week. And yes, they played a little bit better, but they're still getting gashed. Chase Brown last week was outstanding on Monday Night Football, 24.3 PPR points. We know that Tyrone Tracy had a solid game with over 14. Now, they did limit Washington running backs, but that game was a little bit weird. Brian Robinson got hurt early. Austin Eckler got hurt late, and that Washington offense really wasn't the same. They limited Saquon Barkley back in week 10, but that game was blown open early as well. But we know in between it all, in week 11, Mixon crushed him for 35. So in 2 out of the past 4 games, a running back has gone for over 24 PPR points and 3 over 14. A lot of touchdowns to be had. I think this could be one of the best games of Chuba Hubbard's season. Next up, we are going to go to Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson got on track last week with 17.9 PPR points in a middle-of-the-pack matchup against the Tennessee Titans. 16 for 103 and 1 on the ground. Also caught his only target for 6 yards. Normally gets right around 15 touches per game in the backfield. Normally share with Austin Eckler, but Austin Eckler's not there. They have Nichols, they have Rodriguez, but let's face the facts. Washington, they're trying to get into the playoffs. This is a must-have game, as is most of the games the rest of the way if they want to win a wild card spot. And Brian Robinson, I get Jaden Daniels, I get Jeremy, I get they have McLaurin, but Brian Robinson makes this offense go. And Brian Robinson should be involved early and often this week. And Brian Robinson, a tremendous touchdown scorer. He's found the end zone in 2 out of his past 3 games. He's had at least 16 carries in 3 out of his past 4 games. He's averaging 3.1 yards after the contact, which is 85th percentile amongst qualifying running backs. Underrated receiver out of the backfield. This guy can do it all. And he gets a smash spot this week against the New Orleans Saints. This team, this defense in New Orleans is going in the wrong direction. They're falling apart. And I'm expecting a big game out of Brian Robinson. And he could even be used in mop-up duties in the second half. If Washington does what they're supposed to do, Brian Robinson could be carrying this team in the second half of this football game. We know New Orleans, they've given up at least 18 PPR points to a running back in every game but one since week 9. Remember, if you like content like this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the alert icon. so you can be notified anytime we are live to answer your questions, or when we drop content just like this. If you have questions about your lineup, waiver wire questions, trade questions, and the offseason dynasty questions, ask them in the comment section below. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Next up, we're going to talk about DJ Moore. And DJ Moore was a little bit quiet last week. Still managed 10.9 PPR points in a really bad spot against San Francisco. San Francisco dominated that game on both sides of the football. And despite a lot of garbage time, the Bears offense couldn't get it going. But DJ Moore still salvages the day. 8 targets, 6 receptions, 49 yards. Solid high floor day, which is what we want right now to DJ Moore. He's been in that high floor mark for 4 straight games, 2 of which over 23 PPR points. And the volume is starting to come. He's at least 7 targets in every game but one since week 9. He's at least 8 targets in back-to-back games, including 16 opportunities. In week 13 against Detroit, this offense is starting to get going. I think it's going to get back on track this week at Minnesota. We know a few weeks ago these two teams played, and DJ Moore popped for over 24 PPR points, 7 for 106 and 1 on 7 targets. He normally does play well against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, this game is in Minnesota. We know Minnesota's defense can tighten up, but they're very opportunistic. And sometimes an opportunistic defense, they also give up the big plays because they're aggressive. And this is what we've seen a lot this year. A lot of back and forth, a lot of garbage time, which is why Minnesota is the easiest matchup for enemy wide receivers. I'm willing to roll the dice on a Bears offense and a DJ Moore bounce back this week against the Vikings. Next receiver we're going to talk about, Garret Wilson. Garret Wilson, a little bit of erratic play in 3 out of his past 4 games, under 9.1 PPR points, gets back on track last week in a really tough matchup on paper against Miami. 7 for 114 on 10 targets, 18.4 PPR points. He's had back-to-back games with 10 targets and at least 10 targets in 3 out of his past 4 games. This week, the matchup opens up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's one of the easiest teams to throw on. And I get Will Levis had a hard time, but they're the Titans. They're going to struggle sometimes. And also Will Levis had a little bit of an injury to deal with in the second half of that football game. But I'm expecting the Jets to come out firing. Aaron Rodgers still has pride. This team has pride. And they should, in theory, come out and smack around this Jacksonville Jaguars team. And Jacksonville giving up the 5th most PPR points per game to enemy wide receivers. We've seen 4 different wide receivers go for at least 12 PPR points since week 11, 3 of which over 19 PPR points in that time period. We know Garret Wilson's a superstar. Aaron Rodgers just needs to get him the ball. I'm expecting that to happen this week. The last player we're going to start, Jaylden Waddle. Jaylden Waddle was an utter disappointment most of the season, but he has come on. At least 9.3 PPR points in 3 straight games, 2 of those games over 18, 1 of which over 28. He's had at least 9 targets in 2 out of his past 3 games, including 12 last week where he went 9 for 99 against the aforementioned New York Jets, who are number 1 against wide receivers on paper. Now they get Houston, and Houston, good defense, almost like Minnesota, really good against the run, really leaky against the pass. I'm expecting a lot of firepower, 2 good offenses, 2 defenses that can bend and break at times. So if both offenses click the way I think they can click, Jaylden Waddle could have another big game in week 15 of the fantasy playoffs.